Alright, you know the drill, you read the title. Nintendo released a remake for Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door a while back, and I, of course, know every single little detail about it. For example, did you know there's a random interview that happens once you've stayed in an inn 50 times, or that the background of Frankly's house spoils the solution of a later puzzle in the game, or even that there's a second version of the title screen music that most people will never even hear. In this video, I'll be going over every fun, useless fact I know in this game, which even includes some new ones that weren't in the original GameCube version. I'll be going through all these facts roughly in the order that you'd be able to encounter them if you're just going through the game's story. So let's get started where it all begins, the prologue. Also, I'm covering the whole game from start to finish, meaning this video will have a lot of spoilers, especially near the end. So once we get to a point where you don't want to see spoilers anymore, you can click off the video, no hard feelings. I will skip ahead in the game a couple times though, so be warned. Anyways, before even the prologue begins, let's talk about that title theme song. In the original GameCube version, the Japanese release, which came out first, had a slightly different song on the title screen compared to the localized versions. It's only really the intro that's a bit different though. Take a listen. You probably already know that the Switch remake redid all the music too, right? Well, they actually remade both versions of the title theme. If you set your Switch's language to be Japanese, you'll get the remix of the original Japanese theme song. Take a listen. Pretty cool they actually thought to remake both of them. Something else about the title screen is that it starts out super empty with only Mario on it, but it keeps getting updated throughout your adventure as you reach certain milestones. First it'll update with Goombella and then Koops as you recruit them, then Peach, Bowser and Kammy Koopa get added after their first intermissions at the end of Chapter 1, then all the remaining partners get added as they join you, which includes the specific Yoshi color you get, which is really cool, more on that in a bit. Then once you beat the game's main story, confetti will appear whenever you open the title screen, which is pretty fun. And lastly, this one's really weird, but after you beat Bonetail, one of the game's super bosses, Luigi will be added on the far left. I know that sounds like a really random requirement for Luigi, but that's when he started showing up for me. So, I don't know man. Cool that he's there though. Strangely, the status of the title screen doesn't seem dependent on the save file you played last. Even if I go to the title screen straight from a save file where I only have Goombella, it'll still show the most updated one I got. The only way to downgrade your title screen is to delete every single save file, which of course clears it completely back to just Mario. There is one thing that's dependent on the save file you played last though, and that's the color of your Yoshi partner. It'll display the color the last used save file has, even if that save file doesn't have any other partners recruited yet, which is kinda confusing honestly. Like why not just have the whole thing match the last played save? Anyways, actually getting into the prologue now, I'm sure you know about the bandit that bumps into you and steals half your coins. And you might also know that you can actually go to his hideout after this and get that stolen money back, right? But something you might not know is that if you spend all your money before he steals it from you, making it so you have nothing to get stolen, he'll actually comment on the fact that you were broke, saying, "You really owe it to yourself to carry a little cash around, buddy. Treat yourself right. I mean, I went through the trouble of trying to pick your pocket, but I didn't get a single coin," which is honestly really funny. Here's a really famous one. In the game's first town, Petalburg, there's a little toad that when you talk to him says, "Hey, what's up? I gotta say, I've been playing a lot of GBA games lately. There's this one game that just absolutely rules. It's called Fire Emblem. You ever heard of it? Man, it rocks my socks." I'm sure you know what Fire Emblem is, and the reason he talks about it specifically is because Paper Mario is created by Intelligent Systems, which is also the company that makes Fire Emblem. Nice shoutouts to yourselves, guys. This little gamer toad actually has a couple different things he can say depending on when you talk to him. If you just came back from Strong Fortress later in Chapter 1, he'll say, "Hey, what's shaking? I gotta say, I've been playing a lot of Nintendo 64 games recently. You know the N64, right? Well, the game I play the most on it is Paper Mario." There's this girl in the game, Bo, who's pretty much the cutest boo of all time. Obviously, this references the previous game in the Paper Mario series, and the cute girl he's talking about is a Boo Party member from there called Bo. Who, yeah, I guess she's kinda cute for a circle. If you talk to him after clearing Chapter 1, he'll say, "Hey, I gotta say, I'm really loving my Nintendo GameCube. Best system ever, am I right?" Yeah, I think so too. Anyway, I saved up for a new game, the sequel to Paper Mario. I just got started, but it's a blast so far. A blast! I like this one a lot because the sequel to Paper Mario is The Thousand Year Door, aka literally the game this Toad is in. You think he'd freak out when he sees himself in a game? I know I would. He is goated for saying the GameCube is the best system ever though. That's my guy. There are a couple more things this gamer Toad can say, but that's not until way later in the game, meaning I'll mention them when they become available. So if you want to know about those conversations, you gotta keep watching the video. Haha, now you're locked in. What are you gonna do? Click off the video? Then you'll never know what cool games he'll be playing next. Moving on, throughout the game, Mario gets emails on his Mailbox SP, which is just a Game Boy SP, by the way. And some of the different jingles it plays when you get one are references to older Mario songs. Whenever you get an email from Peach after a chapter is done, it'll be the main theme of Super Mario World. When it's from one of the ominous mystery characters in Chapter 3, it'll be the World 6 theme from Super Mario Bros. 3. And at the very end of the game, you get an email from Goombella, and this one has a unique short jingle that wasn't in the original, but I don't think it's a reference to an existing song. Similarly, whenever you get a generic email from any random character, it'll be a generic non-reference little jingle too. But this one really confuses me because in the original, random emails did have a reference tune. Namely, it was the song you would hear when destroying one of the Koopalinks' castles in Super Mario World. I don't really understand why they changed this, to be honest, but it's whatever, I guess. After Chapter 1 is the earliest that you can unlock West Rogueport, so here's a pretty infamous fact from that area. There's this big bob-omb called Lucky that runs the Happy Lucky Lottery, where you can buy a ticket and then not win anything of value every single real-life day after that. It works on your system's internal clock, so if you check the lottery, get your consolation prize, and then skip ahead a day, you can get another shot, and you can keep doing this for as long as you want. If you, however, change the clock back to a time before the last time you checked the lottery, Lucky will be upset, saying someone cheated by tampering with the clock, and he'll keep asking if you did it while hinting that he actually knows you did it. You can keep lying to him and eventually he'll stop pressing you and tell you that to restart the lottery, you'll need to pay a whopping 500 coins. If you instead admit to doing it, he'll freak out in an honestly pretty terrifying scene. Either way, you'll still have to pay 500 coins if you want to do the lottery again. So, yeah, if you're gonna cheat, just set the clock backwards a couple years first or something. Anyways, the remake adds a new partner hint function, which just makes a partner, usually Goombella, chime in with what you have to do next. It's a pretty nice feature, but I found one spot in the game where the partner hint says something unique, namely while in the Pianta Parlor. If you use it there, you won't get advice on the story, but instead Goombella will say, adventuring is hard, sometimes you need to take a break and relax, and maybe even play a few games. What's weird though is that it seems to not work occasionally. I tested it a few times throughout the story and every now and then I would get a normal partner hint while in the parlor. I have no idea what triggers this, but it's something to note at least. Speaking of the Pianta Parlor, you can slip through the gates of the counter to talk to Lala, the Boo employee behind them. Mario will ask to know more about her personal life, to which she says she's 18, her favorite food is honey mushrooms, and that the rest is a secret. But she'll add on that if you get a high score in one of the minigames, that maybe then she'll tell you more. Sure enough, you can keep unlocking more of the minigames and doing well at them, causing her to tell you more and more about herself. After the first high score, she'll say, my sister Pika works in the shop next door, and we get along really well. We go shopping on our days off. Malls, markets, estate sales, we'll pursue wares anywhere. Pika likes jewelry and bags and things, but those don't interest me at all. I guess maybe I could use a little more flair in my outfits though. After the second high score, she'll say, I really love sweets, so I ask Zesty to bake stuff for me all the time. Ooh, and I love nothing better than a nice sweet cake. Sometimes when business is slow, I make it look like we're closed and sneak in a little cake break. But hey, that closed thing is a secret. Seriously, don't tell Pika. After the third high score, she'll say, the other day, a customer named Arthur asked me out to dinner, but I said no. I mean, I don't even know him, right? Still, I wonder if he really likes me. I just don't get it though. What could he like about me? I mean, really. And finally, after the fourth and last high score, she'll say, my dream is to have my own place someday. I just want to be surrounded by cakes and cute stuff all the time. And then I'd get all the people I like to hang out there. It'd be so great. So I've got to work hard now to make my dream come true. But I kinda like wearing these kitty ears too, teehee. After this, she says there are no more high scores to send Mario after, and she tells him that she hopes he's not spending all his time trying to talk to her, which I would of course never do. Finally moving on to chapter 2 now. In the long room in Bogly Tree that leads to both Jabby nests, if you drop down, you can blow away a wall on the left side with Flurry to reveal a secret shop, in which you can find a baby Jabby that's hiding called Jabble that joins your squad of Punies if you're nice to him, and he actually helps the Punies fight against the evil Jabbies, making him the GOAT. If you recruited him, he's even present at the post-chapter 2 goodbye scene with all the Punies, and if you try talking to him, he just hops up and down a little. If you go back to the room where you ran into Miss Mouse after clearing chapter 2, a baby Jabby can be found behind one of the bushes. If you try talking to him, he pops out and gives you a mushroom before running off. And this is actually Jabble, as confirmed by Goombella if you use Tattle on him before talking to him. And you can do this whether you recruited Jabble in chapter 2 or not, by the way. Behind one of the two Jabby nests are 4 pillars with different symbols and a button, and hitting it makes 4 buttons spawn behind the other Jabby nest, where you then have to solve a little puzzle of putting the pictures in the right order, which is the same order as seen in the previous room. However, as I hinted at in the intro to this video, this same solution can be seen in Professor Frankly's house at any point in the game. I just think that's some really fun hidden bit of foreshadowing. They could have put those little things in any order, but they specifically put them in the same order as the puzzle's solution. That's cool. Okay, I guess this next one isn't really a useless fact, but you know how at the end of chapter 2, Lord Crump activates a 5-minute timer and you then have to make your way to the start of the dungeon before time runs out? Well, I had actually never seen what happens if this timer runs out, since they give you more than enough time to escape. And I'm sure plenty of you watching also haven't seen it, so here you go. Yeah, you get a game over. Probably guessed that already, but it's still neat to actually see how it happens now. Anyways, back to useless facts. The Peach intermission after chapter 2 has you do a dance with tech, aka a Peach hologram, with some accompanying waltz music. But did you know that each time you mess up a button input, the song will get worse and worse up to 5 times? Take a listen. If you mess up a 6th time, you have to redo the dance. Also, I gotta say, I honestly quite like the quote-unquote worst version of the song. I just wish the metronome was in there. The Bowser intermission that follows is the first 2D platforming segment, officially called Super Bowser Bros, and there are some fun things to go over here. First, at the start of each of these segments, you get a level intro screen with Bowser saying, ready to roll, and if you die, you'll see the same screen but he'll say, let me at him this time. Well, he actually has a total of 30 different things he can say on this screen, and they aren't random, but instead appear in the same order every time, with those 30 lines from first to last being... Ready to roll, let me at him, inconceivable, I'm on fire, I'm hungry, next time, ain't over yet, charge, good to go, relax, ooh, I'm tired, still in it, rampage time, okay, go time, feel it, I'm sleepy, timing, baby, rhythm, baby, feeling good, concentrate, gah, too close, just a bit more, break time, here goes, little more, I'm still okay, not giving up, gotta do it. After that, he just starts repeating those lines, though in a different order this time, but he doesn't say any new ones past the 30th. He does have 2 extra things he can say only in the water level Super Bowser Bros segment after chapter 4 though. Those being Watery Ears the 3rd time and Beware Squids the 8th time. Also, I'm sure you've noticed, but each time you die, the level counter goes up by 1, which is just a fun way to track your deaths that segment. You can also collect coins during these segments as expected. Normally, in the 2D Super Mario Bros. Games that inspired these segments, collecting 100 coins gets you a 1-up, but you have infinite lives in Super Bowser Bros. So what happens when you get 100 coins here? Well, even though your coins carry over into each following Bowser Bros. Segment, there actually aren't 100 coins to collect. However, you keep your coins when you lose, which also respawns every coin you've collected, meaning that by constantly collecting coins, dying, and recollecting those coins, you can eventually get to 100 to see what happens. And he just kinda celebrates as you get 50,000 points, which are useless. I mean, it's funny, so worth it, I guess? Okay, actual quick last thing here, if you get too big during these segments, Bowser will break the flagpole and he won't fit in the castle, instead jumping up and down and then celebrating. That one's pretty well known, but like, I gotta mention it, you know? Moving on, after chapter 2, the gamer Toad in Petalburg will have new dialogue when talking to him. Namely, I've been playing Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door a lot lately. I wasn't sure at first, but that game is awesome. I just beat it, every chapter. Totally cool ending, I loved it, so worth the money. Think there will be a sequel? If not, I hope they make a Paper Luigi game. Yeah, I bet that'd be awesome too. He'll have one more thing to say much later in the game, so keep watching the video and we'll check in with him later. And hey, if you're enjoying the video so far, maybe consider leaving a like, I'd really appreciate that. Thanks! Getting back to Rogueport, after chapter 2 is when you can unlock the paper mode minigame in the Pianta Parlor, where you race a huge crowd of NPCs to the finish line, with huge fans occasionally blowing you away, for which you have to then activate paper mode, which also slows you down. The crowd of NPCs can randomly contain 3 characters found throughout the game, namely Koopy-Koo, Wonky, and Luigi. They don't have a very low chance of appearing at all. In fact, if you keep playing this minigame, it's not uncommon to occasionally have all 3 of them show up at the same time. Now here's probably the weirdest change I found in the remake. The GameCube original had a bunch of random crowd events here that were for some reason seemingly removed from the Switch remake. One where the entire crowd is made up of the same species, either just Toads, just Pink Bombs, or just Little Mousers, with seemingly no chance of Koopy-Koo, Wonky, or Luigi showing up. Another possible random event was that the crowd would be mostly made up of the same species, with either only Pink Bombs or Little Mousers, with others sprinkled in here and there. There was also a chance for this to happen with almost only Toads, but that one does seem to still be in the remake, while the other 2 were removed for some reason. But in return, they seemingly added one new random event here, that being one where the crowd is mostly made up of an equal spread of Pink Bombs and Little Mousers, with only a very small handful of Toads, and of course a chance for the guest NPCs to show up. I'm pretty sure this is the only newly added event, since I tried over 150 times to get any other new ones, meaning I also didn't get any of the events I said were removed from the original, hence why I'm sure they are gone. And yeah, I really have no idea why they felt the need to make these random changes here. But they're cool, I guess? No, I'm kidding. This is a lame change, even if it's super insignificant. Speaking of paper mode, by the way, you can reach the backside of the Trouble Center in East Rogueport by slipping through this gap between it and Bobbery's house. And did you know that there's actually a hidden door here that you can reveal with Flurry's ability? The door leads to the other side of the Trouble Center's desk, where it's revealed that it's being run by a member of the Robo-Thieves called Goose, who claims that because there are many sketchy requests that come in, he'd rather it be a secret that the Robo-Thieves run the operation. Also, in case you forgot who the Robo-Thieves are, they're the gang of thieves led by Ishnil, who is the guy in the house behind the Trouble Center that gives you advice on how to get to Don Pianta. Man, that's so cool. You never have to do this, but it's an awesome piece of world building that's just hidden for players to find. I love things like that. Anyways, next up is chapter 3 of Glitz and Glory, which is actually my favorite chapter in the game, but it's also my good friend Brent's favorite chapter, whom you might know better as King of Skill, so I thought it'd be fun to have him go over the useless facts for this segment. This chapter is actually packed with easy to miss bits of trivia, so take it away, Brent.
Thanks, PJiggles, for letting me talk about my favorite chapter in Thousand Year Door. This is a chapter where things are constantly happening throughout the entire chapter. One of the first things you can do when you arrive in Glitzville is pick up the phone in the booth to the left of the plaza. It'll give you some flavor text from random callers, like someone saying, "The local time is now snack time," Or, hi, am I the 987,034th caller? Did I win the free tickets? And so on. These calls are pretty funny, but there are actually 4 cameos from characters you've met on your journey so far. Those being Frankly, who says, Mario, Professor Frankly here, be careful out there. Croup, who says, well hi there Murphy, it's Croup, the mayor of Petalburg, how's Coops? Punio, who says, hi Mario, this is Punio, stop by every now and then, will you? And finally Luigi, who says, hi brother, Luigi here, how are you holding up? Moving on into the actual arena, before you join the Glitz Pit, you get to see Rock Hawk in the middle of a fight. And after he wins, he gets interviewed by Grubba, and one of his lines is, you weaklings might as well stick to video game fighting, okay? Cause I'll hurt you. In the Spanish translation of this scene, however, he instead says, the amateurs should stay in their house playing Super Smash Bros. At least according to PJiggles' Spanish-speaking friend, Luis. PJiggles checked in with them just in case, but either way you can see that Rock Hawk mentioned Super Smash Bros. Interestingly, in the original GameCube version, he instead said Super Smash Bros. Melee specifically. I wonder why they made that change. Maybe because Melee isn't the newest Smash game at the time of this remake's release, and they didn't want to update it to say Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Who knows? When you join the Glitz Pit and get a tour of all the locker rooms, the Champions Room has a picture of Rock Hawk above the bed frame, since he's currently the champion, which gets replaced with a picture of Mario by the time you become the champion. You only ever get to see the Rock Hawk picture during that initial tour, as otherwise you can't enter the room, unless you become champion, at which point it'll of course be replaced by a picture of Mario. But what's funny is that you could actually never see the Rock Hawk picture in the original GameCube release because of the 4:3 aspect ratio cutting it off when Grubba shows you the room. But now in the Switch remake, which has a wider aspect ratio, you can see the Rock Hawk picture. You were able to see the Rock Hawk picture in the original if you played it on an emulator and used a simple widescreen hack, but I mean PJiggles would never do that, of course. Moving ahead a bit, there's a point during your Glitz Pit ranking climb where you have to go through the lobby, and you'll see Rock Hawk surrounded by his fans. You can get rid of these fans by either hammering them or blowing them away with Flurry. And if you get rid of them all, Rock Hawk will say, hey, you, that ain't cool, don't beat on my fans just cause you ain't got none, which is pretty funny. If you go back through the Glitz Pit after Chapter 3, you'll have your own crowd of fans if you step out after a while. And yes, you can beat up on them as well if you want, though this time it doesn't give you any funny dialogue. Anyways, the biggest useless fact for this chapter is the different colors your Yoshi partner can have. This one is extremely well known, but PJiggles would probably get eaten alive in the comments if it wasn't mentioned in this video. There are 7 colors the Yoshi can have, based on a timer that starts the moment the Yoshi egg joins you atop the hot dog stand, and ends when you respawn back in the minor league locker room after losing to the Iron Adonis twins. Though I'm not entirely sure if it pauses during loading screens and such, since playing with a timer on the side can yield inconsistent results sometimes. Anyways, in order, the colors are green, red, blue, orange, pink, black, and white, with the later colors having tighter timing windows. 0 points will be awarded to those who guessed what color PJiggles went for. And like he mentioned earlier in the video, your Yoshi's color is even carried over to the title screen, which is pretty cool. Going back to stuff that's not extremely well known, a swooper called Sir Swoop comes in as a new challenger partway through Chapter 3. And since he's the newest challenger, he ranks under Mario, and you never get to fight him and his team. However, he replaces King K's team in the ranking after he disappears, which happens after the Bob-omb squad fight, and you can actually fight Sir Swoop and his team, Wings of Night, if you select them for an exhibition match after this. In the post-Chapter 3 Glitz Pit runback, King K is back in the pit, taking Sir Swoop's spot again, meaning this is the only way in time you can fight Sir Swoop's team. Something funny is that you can get a ton of star points from them, because they're technically Chapter 4 enemies. In the GameCube original, there were no exhibition matches, so if you wanted to fight Sir Swoop, you had to rank down by constantly losing fights they got to their level. However, you can't rank down anymore in the remake, so exhibition matches is the only way to fight them, which is way quicker and less tedious anyway, so whatever. Similarly, Bandy Andy's team goes missing after your fight against Hamma Bamma and Flare, and gets replaced by a new team called the Destructors, which consists of 2 Spinias and 2 Spanias. They are never seen or heard from outside of this, so a lot of players don't know of their existence at all, let alone that you can fight them. Partway through your time in the Major League, you get a cake from a fan, and if you eat it, it heals you and that's that. But if you choose not to eat it and then come back from the next fight, Shell Shock, the blue Koopa, will say he ate your cake since you didn't want it, and he says that it's the best cake he ever had and calls you an idiot. You get a second cake later near the end of the chapter, but this one is poisoned. So if you decide to eat it, your partner will get paralyzed and you'll have to do the fight against Chomp County alone, which really sucks if you get a bad prompt. Your partner will be fine after the battle and they'll actually comment on if you won or lost without them. If you don't eat the cake, Shell Shock will again eat it and he'll be paralyzed on the floor when you get back from the match. So I guess that's some nice karma for him calling you an idiot earlier. Last fact before I hand it over to PJiggles again. Here's some dialogue most of you have probably never seen before. After the fight against the Shell Shockers, the Iron Adonis twins bust in to challenge Mario again. And if you actually lose this fight, you get some unique dialogue from them that's super easy to miss because most people won't lose this rematch. You still progress into Glitz Pit like normal if you lose this fight, and you still get paid the full 17 coins in fight money, so there's no penalty to losing at all here. The same exact stuff is true for the surprise Bowser fight after the Magic Koopa Masters match, by the way. You get some unique dialogue while still progressing through the ranking. Alright, that's all the useless facts out of me. Back to you, PJiggles.
Thanks, Brent. He's a natural at sharing useless facts, isn't he? Well, anyways, moving on from my favorite chapter to, definitely not my favorite. Chapter 4, the one where people turn into pigs due to a curse. There's an easy to miss scene the first time you're in Twilight Town that's honestly pretty dark for a Mario game. One house has a mother with 3 starving children. She tells you that her husband has already been turned into a pig and asks if you can spare some food for her and her kids. And if you give her something, she gives you a shooting star and then turns into a pig herself, which is already really depressing. One of the kids literally starts crying, and another wonders if pigs taste good. Like, bro. I guess that's not a useless fact since you get a pretty good item out of it, but I just wanted to mention it because like I said, it's easy to miss and you only get one shot at seeing this, so I'm sure plenty of people watching this video never knew about it. Here's something that is extremely useless though. There's a hidden coin block in front of the creepy steeple. This hidden coin block has always perplexed me because it literally only gives you 1 coin and serves no other purpose. Every other hidden block in the game is either there to help you reach something else, or actually gives you a halfway decent reward for finding it, like a badge or multiple coins. And then there's this one. It doesn't help you get anything else, and it just contains a single coin. Like, what's the point? I would almost believe that they just put this here for the sake of being confusing, since this place is supposed to feel off and unsettling, but maybe that's a stretch. Now onto something I spent way too much time on. Once actually in the creepy steeple, there's a point where you open a weird looking chest and a ton of boos pop out and fly away, with the final boo asking you how many boos just popped out of the chest, with the correct answer being 200. I always wondered if it actually was 200 boos exactly that flew out. So yeah, I counted manually by going frame by frame in my editing software. It is way harder than you'd imagine to actually count them all accurately. I did it a bunch of times using different counting methods, and most often I would indeed land on exactly 200 boos, though a couple times I landed just below at 198 and 199, and on one attempt I landed higher at 201. So I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say that it is indeed 200 boos that fly out. If it is true that 200 boos flew out when you first opened it, that would mean that the answer to the question could be considered wrong, since the boo that asks said question also flies out, meaning it would be 201 boos. But then again, they did specify how many flew out just now when the box opened. But then again, considering I landed just barely below 200 a couple times when counting, it could also be that it was indeed 199 boos that flew out, and the one asking the question is the 200th boo, which would be really funny, though personally I don't think that's the case. Moving past me wasting my time, during the segment where Dupless takes over Mario's body and you're controlling the real Mario except as a shadow, all the villagers in town will be freed from Dupless's pig curse, and if you check out Mayor Dower's house, Dupless will be there with all your partners, and Dower is treating them to dinner on his table, which includes a pig that isn't there before or after the segment, suggesting that they're eating a cursed villager, which is super weird, especially since Dower knows about the curse, since not only did he say his family turned into pigs, but he himself turned into a pig moments later, and your partners know of the curse as well, obviously. Since the curse has been lifted and everyone that was a pig already turned back by this point, it's totally possible that this is a villager that died whilst they were a pig. Otherwise they would have turned back to normal as well, right? That's pretty dark, bro. I'm not sure I trust this guy. Something this remake added is that you can now see Mario's head and his active partner on the file select screen, which isn't very exciting on its own, but if you check it during this segment in Chapter 4, Mario's head will actually be purple on the file select screen too, and he'll have no active partner as well since they're taken away by Dupless. Pretty neat, easy to miss as well. Okay, on to something a little more serious. The remake made a bunch of text changes to more closely resemble the original Japanese script. And by far the most well-known instance of this is them restoring the part about Vivian's character that implied she was a transgender woman. You see, in the OG's Japanese release, Vivian was heavily implied to be trans, who constantly got belittled about it by her sister, Beldam. For example, when Vivian refers to her group as the Three Shadow Sisters in Chapter 2, Beldam yells at her by saying that they can't be the Three Shadow Sisters since Vivian is a man, at least in her eyes. In the English localization, any hint towards her being trans was completely removed, as well as any insulting lines about it from Beldam, probably to avoid potential age rating issues at the time. In the English version of the remake, however, they made strides to restore the original Japanese version's writing as closely as possible, and Vivian is now way more obviously written to be a transgender woman in English, with this line from the scene where she joins your party making the rounds like crazy online before the remake's release. Truth is, it took me a while to realize I was their sister, not their brother. Now their usual bullying feels way heavier, since that line apparently hits hard as hell for transgender people. Now this is super cool and all, but considering the, let's say, messy translation history this part of her character had in the original, I wanted to take it upon myself to find out if this character restoration is present in all 12 languages the Thousand Year Door remake supports, which is United States English, France French, Canadian French, German, Spain Spanish, Latin American Spanish, Italian, Dutch, Japanese, Simplified Chinese, Traditional Chinese, and Korean. So I hit up some of my bilingual friends, sent out a couple posts online recruiting other people that could do some translating for me, and send them all the footage of this scene in their respective languages, including both versions of French and Spanish, which depends on whether your Switch's region is set to America or Europe, by the way. And I am extremely happy to confirm that Vivian being trans is indeed canon and extremely obvious in every single language the remake offers. It isn't subtle at all, there's no twisting it any other way, Vivian is trans in every language. Massive W for Nintendo, honestly. On screen now is the translated text I got from all my translators of this whole sequence about her telling Mario about her history with her sisters, and her wanting to help him out by repaying his earlier kindness. Keep in mind that not every language works with the exact same writing rules and such as English, so the translations might be a tiny bit different depending on who you ask, but their context is of course still 100% accurate. Something cool I want to add on about the Korean version specifically is that in the Korean language, if you're a boy, you would refer to your older sister as Nuna, and if you're a girl, you would call your older sister Onni, which is what Vivian does when she refers to her sisters by saying Onni didididan, kinda hinting a bit more towards her identity as a girl before she outright says it. My Korean translator taught me that, and I just wanted to share it because I thought it was neat. And yeah, I definitely just botched the hell out of those pronunciations, didn't I? I'm super glad they fully restored this part of Vivian's character from the original Japanese version, but I should mention that they did not keep the part of Beldam openly and aggressively denying Vivian being a woman, which, is probably for the better. Alright, sorry for that fact taking as long as it did. I just really wanted to give it some time in the spotlight since it was a big topic of discussion before the game came out. Moving on, after you trick the locked up parrot into revealing Dupless's real name, it'll freak out and pretend to be a normal bird that can't speak by saying pretty bird, and if you talk to it again after this, it'll say shine get, which is the text the Japanese version of Super Mario Sunshine displays when collecting a shine sprite, which is awesome. Anyways, a funny oversight in the original version was that any partner badges you have equipped wouldn't work for Vivian during the final Dupless fight in the chapter, since she leaves your site before the battle starts and only rejoins partway through. I guess this caused some error in the code that made the game not consider Vivian a partner character like usual in this fight, hence why partner badges don't work. But this was fixed in the remake. As you can see, I had the Charge P badge equipped before entering the fight, and Vivian can use the charge command after rejoining the battle. Well, that chapter took forever to get through, so let's move on to chapter 5 now. There's a being called Waka hiding near the beach of Keelhaw Keel, and if you hit him, you'll obtain a Waka Bump, an extremely powerful healing item that are in limited supply in the game. Here's something you might not know though. He'll actually react differently depending on how you hit him. If you jump or hammer him with Mario, he'll say whack-hoo, direct hit. Hitting him with Koops' shell toss makes him say whack-a-doo, shellact. And blowing him up with Bobbery makes him say whack-oom, explosive. The 8th time you hit him, he'll just say whack-a-woo, no matter how you hit him. And then he leaves, never to return. Yup, you'll never see him again after this. This chapter introduces these ember-like enemies, which are essentially floating fire bubbles. Goombella's tattle tells you that something horrible is likely to happen if you attack them with fire, which seems pretty obvious. But have you ever wondered what actually happens if you do? Well, here it is. Yeah, they heal and multiply if you do. So, yeah, don't do that. Unless you want a fun way to grind star points. In which case, hey, go ahead. It's pretty effective. Damn, that was a useful fact. My bad. And yeah, as you expect, this works on every lava bubble type enemy in the game. You eventually recruit Bobbery this chapter, who has an attack called Bomb Squat, where you aim and throw 3 small bombs towards the enemies that'll explode in a chain reaction after 2 turns. Here's a fun fact about this move. It's the only one in the game that you can use to directly attack yourself if you throw the bombs straight up, which is awesome. The Peach intermission after Chapter 5 is pretty interesting, as it has you create an invisibility potion by placing some differently colored vials in the right order, pouring them in a big container when the machine tells you to, and then heating it for exactly 30 seconds. Doing this correctly will yield the invisibility potion. If you mess up anywhere along the way, by either putting the vials in the wrong order, missing a few button presses, or not cooking it for the right amount of time, Peach will either shrink or grow in size when she drinks it, and you can actually control her while she's like that for a little bit, until she automatically goes back to her normal size after a few seconds. During this intermission, you have to insert a data disk in Grodus' computer, which are actually just a Famicom disk system and a disk for it, and doing so even plays a bit of that system's title boot up screen, music and all. Pretty fun reference, even though it's kinda weird for Grodus' computer to display Mario and Luigi like that. Oh well. During the following Bowser intermission in Twilight Town, you have to talk to Lord Grump, which will cause him to find the super bomb Vivian dropped here earlier in one of the nearby bushes. But if you check a specific bush before then, Bowser will find something. Psych, he doesn't find anything. The Twilight Blade was never real. I do like that they actually play the item get jingle for this though, and yeah, no other bushes here cause something interesting to happen. Moving on, here's something that makes me so sad. Luigi is on an adventure at the same time as Mario, and you can listen to his extremely long stories about it whenever you want, even though Mario and his partner will always fall asleep halfway through them. In the GameCube version, every partner would fall asleep during these stories, probably out of boredom, with the sole exception of Bobbery, who genuinely seems interested in his tales and stays awake for the whole thing like the Chad he is. Now the reason I said in the GameCube version is because they sadly fixed this in the remake. Now Bobbery falls asleep during Luigi's stories like every other partner. This actually bums me out so much. It's totally in character for Bobbery to legitimately be interested in Luigi's stories, and him being the only one to not fall asleep during them was always one of my favorite little details about this game. But I guess it was actually a little mistake from the devs all this time, hence why they changed it in the remake. Huge bummer if you ask me, totally loses Bobbery some cool points. Moving on to Chapter 6, it takes place on a train, the Access Express, and one of the cabins houses a dead ghost toad, who asks you to retrieve his diary from the luggage cart, and he warns you not to read it, obviously. Well, after you collect it, you can actually choose to read it from your important items menu, and here's what happens if you do so. Yeah, pretty brutal. This is already pretty well known, but I gotta say, they made that sequence look really good in the remake. You eventually reach Riverside Station, where you'll encounter some poison pokey enemies, and here's something extremely random about them. They have an attack where they shoot off a segment of their body at you, eventually getting down to just being a head. and if you use Yoshi's gulp move on them in this state, there's a 50% chance of Yoshi spitting the head out like usual, damaging the enemy behind them, or a 50% chance of Yoshi just straight up swallowing it, killing the Poke instantly. This is the only unique interaction Gulp has in the entire game, and it's just so random. Not to mention how much you have to go out of your way to even encounter it. You can attack the Poke segments to make them lose them faster, but they don't have a lot of health and they'll most likely die before they're down to just their head. So you have to keep letting them attack you by launching their segments, which can honestly take a while since they have more moves they can do instead. And even after all that, you still have only a 50-50 chance of Yoshi actually doing it or not. Like, why even go through the effort of coding this, you know? Technically, you can first encounter this all the way back in Chapter 3, since you fight some normal Pokés in the Glitz Pit, whom this works on too, but you fight them before you obtain Yoshi, so you'd have to go out of your way to do an exhibition match with them after recruiting Yoshi, which you really don't have a good reason to do, other than to see this Easter egg, if you can even call it that. Speaking of Yoshi moves, here's a little mistake from the original that they didn't fix in the remake. The description of his Stampede move says it attacks all ground enemies, which isn't entirely true since it actually attacks all enemies, including flying ones, as seen by it hitting the flying rough buff here, as little sense as that makes. At the end of the chapter, you reach Poshley Heights, and one of the houses here has some model trains on some shelves, with one of them being the one from the original Paper Mario that takes you to that game's Chapter 2. Pretty cool. Here's another Paper Mario 1 reference. Sometime after the chapter, you get an email from the real Zip Toad thanking you for taking care of his imposter, which was actually Dupless, and in the attached image, you can see Junior Troopa from the original Paper Mario in the background, in his upgraded form with wings and a spike on his head. This one is well known too, but seeing this Paper Mario 1 character updated in this remake is just so cool, and he's not the only one, more on that later. Well, besides Parakarry, obviously, but I mean, that wasn't exactly hidden. During your time at Riverside Station, you obtain the Ultra Boots, which you can use to perform the Spring Jump ability, but did you know that if you do this in battle while there's a ceiling, such as when fighting the Swoopers in Creepy Steeple, Mario will actually bonk his head and fall back down slowly, completely wasting his turn in the process, which is hilarious. After clearing Chapter 6, a new conversation becomes available from some crows in Twilight Town if you eavesdrops on them with Vivian's Veil ability, which goes as follows. I'm thinking of starting a new pay site. It's going to be a real estate listings page that I'll call Luigi's Mansion. Hey, that sounds good, but I think I've heard that name before. You don't want rabbit lawyers attacking you. This is obviously a pretty on-the-nose reference to Luigi's Mansion, which at the time of the original only had that one game. Fun reference though, and very easy to miss. Moving on to Chapter 7. Look, I like this chapter and all, probably more than most people tend to do, but there are actually like no interesting facts for me to talk about here. It's pretty short. In fact, the only one I have is that dropping down into this changing room from the ceiling's rafters turns you into an 8-bit sprite with accompanying music from the original Super Mario Bros. Playing, which is an extremely well-known Easter egg. It affects all your partners as well as matching Yoshi's color, which is cool, and it'll also use Luigi, Wario, or Waluigi's colors on Mario, depending on if you have the L emblem, W emblem, or both equipped. Quick little spoiler warning, I already gave one at the start, but I'm about to mention something new in the remake that's only obtained in the very late postgame, so skip to this time step if you want to skip it. There's your warning, 3, 2, 1. Okay, the new Gold Medal badge, which you get after getting every recipe, badge, and Tetalog entry, turns Mario gold and shiny when equipped, and this also works during the 8-bit Easter egg in Chapter 7. I really like that they went through the effort to make sure it's included here, that's nice. Okay, and that's the end of the quick spoiler. Moving on to the final chapter now, here's something that's not useless, but I feel like not very many people know about it. Each time you jump over one of these spinning fire bars near the entrance of the Palace of Shadow, it'll get a little faster, and if you do it enough times, it'll actually disappear and poof into a couple coins. Way later in the chapter, interacting with the Shadow Sisters after beating them will cause them all to grunt, and then your partner will say something along the lines of, "Let's leave them, Mario," while all using a different insult. Goombella calls them doofuses, Koops calls them wimps, Flurry calls them louts, Yoshi calls them wusses, along with calling Mario Gonzalez of course, Bobbery calls them cats, and Miss Mouse calls them idiots. But Vivian will actually have a unique interaction. When you start this little scene, she'll look sad, and then she'll say, "I'm sorry, sis," instead. Pretty neat little touch to have her even emote a bit differently too. Alright, here's a pretty infamous one. Near the end of the chapter, Grottus threatens to kill Peach if Mario doesn't cooperate, and you get to choose between attacking or not attacking him. And in the original game's English release, they accidentally swapped Grottus' responses, making it so that choosing to attack Grottus will make him say, "Stop your blubbering, this is it, meet your end." And choosing not to attack him will make him say, "Worm, you dare defy me?" Obviously, these responses would make way more sense if they were the other way around, right? Well, as you probably expected, this was fixed in the remake. Now Grottus' response actually makes sense no matter which option you pick. Only mentioning this because, like I said, this era was pretty famous in the original. So you know how the Shadow Queen offers Mario to become her servant before the battle? Have you ever wondered what happens if you actually accept this offer? Well, here you go. Yeah, you get a game over. Shocker. But I do really like the little sequence building up to it. It's pretty ominous. Speaking of the final boss, since she's actually Princess Peach being possessed and all, the player might choose to not attack her by instead stalling with items or something, and she'll actually have a unique response if you do so, saying, "Muhahaha, why do you delay? Face me," which will also make your partner say something along the lines of, "We'll never give up." Anyways, beating her caps off the main story, but not this video, as we still have a couple more post-game things to go over. Well, actually, let's start with a couple things that are technically not exclusive to the post-game, but you're extremely likely to only get to them after beating the main story. Remember that fact about the random interview I cold opened this video with? Yeah, let's cover that one now. The 50th time you sleep at an inn, the innkeeper will congratulate you when you wake up with a cameraman Lakitu taking a picture of you, which causes Mario and his partner to strike a pose. You then get 200 coins, so it's technically not useless, but I mean, you don't really use inns that much in this game. I don't think anyone would ever use one 50 times in a playthrough, unless they're specifically going for this hidden scene. I even had to grind inn sleeps for this footage. One thing I do like a lot about this though is that they even wrote unique dialogue for every innkeeper to match their personality. They really didn't have to do that, but I like that they did. I wondered how this scene would play out in the Poshley Heights Inn, since that's strangely the only inn where the innkeeper doesn't just stay in the room that you sleep in. But no, the innkeeper at the reception desk still shows up anyways. Something else you're extremely unlikely to do at all is actually get 300 shop points. You probably know about the shop point system in this game, where you get 1 point per purchase and you receive specific rewards at certain thresholds, with the highest reward being 3 gold bars at 300 points. To put it bluntly, you will probably never buy that many items in a playthrough of this game, even if you're going for completion, so I'm sure not many people know what actually happens when you hit the highest reward. Yeah, you know where this is going by now. I actually went ahead and grinded this out. The answer is that you get the 3 gold bars as expected, and then your points reset back to 0, letting you start the climb all the way back from the start again. Damn, that's anticlimactic. Okay, now let's get to the last couple facts for today, which are actually exclusive to the postgame. One of the troubles that unlock after Chapter 8 is from Bub, the little bronze Bob-omb kid, where he got in a fight with his mom Sylvia, and he asked you to bring her a present with a letter attached on his behalf. You then of course bring her the gift with the letter, which moves her so much that she says she's gonna break down and cry. She then runs off screen for a bit to actually do so, before then walking back towards Mario. The reason I just showed that in the original version is because in the remake, they forgot to account for the wider aspect ratio for this scene specifically, so you can still see her when she's supposed to be off screen to cry. Pretty funny little oversight there. Something else in Poshley Heights that becomes available in the postgame is that Lady Bo will be there now, who was a partner from the original Paper Mario, and she's joined by her butler who's also from that game. Again, really cool to see Paper Mario 1 characters updated in the TTYD Remake art style like this. And something new in the Switch version is that the first time you talk to her, the song that plays at the very start at Mario and Luigi's house will play here, since that's a new song in the remake, which is just a remix of Paper Mario 1's title theme. super fitting. Awesome way to strengthen this callback even further. And for our final fact of today, let's check back in with our friend the Gamer Toad from Petalburg one last time. After beating Chapter 8, his last bit of new dialogue is, "I've gotta say, I've been playing the new Paper Mario game a whole lot. I'm on the fence so far, gotta put serious time into a game to review it properly. But I can definitely tell you this, if you're a Luigi fan, this game will only encourage you." This is indeed a reference to the Thousand Year Door's sequel, Super Paper Mario, for the Nintendo Wii. And in that game, Luigi actually plays a huge part in the overall plot. This same reference was in the original GameCube release too, meaning they likely had the broad strokes of Super Paper Mario's plot already written by the time they were finishing up development of TTYD, which also matches well with the well-known fact that Super Paper Mario was originally going to be a GameCube game before being heavily delayed, causing it to release on the Wii instead. I find it interesting that despite this Toad constantly referencing actual real-life video games, they didn't update any of his dialogue to mention new games that have released in the past 20 years. Like, how funny would it have been if one of his new postgame lines was something like, "Hey there, I've been playing Paper Mario Sticker Star lately, and wow, that game sure fucking sucks ass." Anyways, that's gonna do it for today's video. Big shoutouts as usual to Quote is Cool, Giant Firing Coal, The Flying Fire, LyrFX1, Liam the Chef, Sheen for the Win, Gurk, Sil700, Exobear, and the rest of my Patreon supporters, both past and present. I actually made a ton of little changes to my Patreon a little while back, so feel free to check out my tiers there if you're curious about what I have to offer now. Another big shoutouts to King of Skill. It was super fun having him on for a bit in this video. I've literally never done a YouTuber cameo bit on my channel like that before, so I'm really curious to see what you guys thought of it. Maybe I'll do something like that more often in the future if people like it. Anyways, as usual, don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and maybe even subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. The algorithm likes it when you do those things, and I'm actually planning another Thousand Year Door video sometime in the future, so stay tuned for that. With that all said and done, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye bye!